This film, for me, is the testament to the fact that as artists, as filmmakers, as people, we can do this, and we will do it no matter what's happening. This team came together and, against all odds, made this film. It was already impossible that we could fathom doing such a film in Palestine under military occupation, no freedom of movement, and here we are, like, preparing to shoot this huge film with hundreds of crew and cast. And the way we functioned was like, let's just be free.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time zone you're living in, it's time for Sumud. All about humanity, so this right here for everyone. Uplift, amplify, empower everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time zone you're living in, it's time for Sumud.
Visit sumudpod.com to subscribe and connect with us on social media. You can also support our work by contributing monthly on the Support Us page. Even $10 a month helps us continue amplifying Palestinian voices and those in solidarity. Thank you.
On this episode of the Sumud Podcast, we uplift, empower, and amplify Annemarie Jacir and her film, Palestine 36. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Can I read a bio about you really quick?
By the way, it's so nice to hear someone pronounce my name correctly, my last name.
Are you making fun of me, or did I actually?
No, you really pronounced it.
Because all the listeners know I get the names wrong all the time.
No, you got my name, Jacir. Everybody says Jacir. Anyway, it was nice, yeah.
I'm only going to say it one time, too, because I'll mess it up later, I promise. You are a Palestinian filmmaker, poet, and cultural force born in Bethlehem, Palestine. You have directed and produced more than 16 films. Your work made history with the first Palestinian short film ever selected for Cannes Film Festival. You also became the first Palestinian woman to direct a feature film. And remarkably, all 4 of your feature films have been Palestine's official submission to the Academy Awards, a distinction no filmmaker anywhere in the world has achieved. Your latest film, Palestine 36, received one of the longest standing ovations in the history of the Toronto International Film Festival. How awesome is all of that? How do you feel about that?
I feel good.
Because I
feel old.
No, you're not. You're definitely not old. No. I want to open with this. Reading all of that and all of your achievements. And by the way, all of these firsts, like, props to you. That's just amazing.
Thank
and
you.
I'm proud to be a fellow Palestinian with you. Really proud of your work. Seriously, that means a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That means a lot.
This episode is proudly sponsored by Palestinian-American attorney Ibrahim Awad. You may know him as the Karate Attorney. He's a huge member of our community and a big supporter of the podcast. Follow him at Karate Attorney on all social media outlets or visit his website, karateattorney.com. That advisor at Columbia University told you to throw your script or whatever you were pitching for your thesis in the garbage.
Yeah.
What's your message to that person?
You did your research.
I did my research.
Wow, yeah. He said the best thing you can do is light it on fire and throw it in the trash.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Care to share his name?
No, I won't share his name. But actually, anyone who went to Columbia probably knows who he is.
Okay.
He was like, yeah. I actually cried. I really was like so hurt by that I left the room and I cried. Another professor came after me and he's like, Annemarie, it's tough love. It's tough love. You know, he's just like that. I'm like, I don't need tough love. Like, we get enough tough love. Like, we are like born in like tough love. Like, khalas.
Yeah.
Enough of the tough love. And it's abusive, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was he a Zionist or was he really just being critical?
He was just really critical also, and he was upset also. And even when I shot the film anyway, and he watched it, and he was like, you didn't do anything that like I taught you to do. He was very classical about, you know, and Columbia, the film department is like that. They were very straightforward about, you know, how to make a film and A to B, and you have your main character and you follow the story of the main character, and it's like, this is how it's done. And I didn't do that. I loved learning all that, and then I knew all the rules, and then I messed it up and did it my way.
Well, you're Palestinian. You don't believe in rules.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it was a short film. It was my first short film, and it was a little bit experimental with like 20 Impossibles, and it was, you know, it was playing with, you know, things, and it disturbed him deeply. It's like as if I failed him because he taught us this is how you make films, and then when we didn't go make the films like he said, it upset him.
Did you ever watch Good Will Hunting?
Yeah.
When he says, "Hey, you like them apples?"
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Did you send that email to him after maybe?
You know what? I never spoke to him again.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I have to say something. They showed that film now to incoming students. A student told me that at Columbia. She said, why they showed us your film in like the opening, like the whatever first week of school. Like this is what alumni have done. I was like, wow. Do you know the backstory?
No apology.
Yeah, no,
not gonna happen.
Not gonna happen.
Yeah. That's unfortunate.
We don't need that.
Yeah, I hear that. You were born in Palestine. You've been to Saudi. You went to Texas. You ended up in LA. You've been a telephone operator, a radio DJ, English teacher, camerawoman, swimming instructor. What else am I missing there that you've done?
A lot of stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of things. Yeah. I've done a lot of things until I found filmmaking. But even before that, with the filmmaking, it was like a long time I was working in the industry. In LA, of all places, and I was an assistant, and I was doing PAing and doing all kinds of things, and then I felt that I wasn't getting anywhere, and I wasn't learning about how to make films. So that's when I went to film school for graduate work.
How were you treated in Hollywood as a Palestinian?
I was treated like Hollywood was a really tough place, and when I was there were many things that were difficult. One of them is that I couldn't find a Palestinian community. Now I think things have really changed, but it was, like in terms of, what was happening, speaking out, there was like nobody. I've always been an activist, and I was at my work and I was writing letters, to various senators and this and that, and I printed them, and they accidentally got, sent to the company printer, but on the letterhead of the company. And then the HR guy calls me in, and he's like, Annemarie, we don't mind you being active, but, not on our company letterhead. You can't be doing this. And I was like, oh my God, I don't do this. I don't. I felt so bad. But also, like, I had a boss tell me, don't ever tell anybody you're Palestinian. He's like, you were really active. You really talk about like being Palestinian. Just with your accent and the way you look, you can completely pass. Nobody would ever know. He was Jewish, actually. And he's like, I support Palestine, and just take it from me. If you want to get anywhere in this industry, just stop talking about it. Just do your work and don't talk about it.
Not much has changed.
Yeah, not much has changed.
Yeah. How did you feel when they were saying that to you?
I knew it wasn't the place for me. I was like, I'm not going to stay here. Also, it's not the kind of cinema that I like, and I can't. It's just such a core part of my identity. I'm like, I don't want to be in a place where I have to, pretend. I was always really struck by how, in LA, it was such an international city, but I wasn't hearing the languages. I couldn't find a Palestinian community. I wasn't hearing, like, everybody was just assimilate. And I think in other cities in the U.S., that's not the case. There is that more of a feeling that, communities, internationally, they move together, they blend together. You can speak your language, you can share your culture, you can be who you are. I didn't feel that in LA. That was a long time ago, but I never felt that in LA.
I don't think it's changed much.
Yeah.
I don't think it's changed much. You eventually, which I admire, made the decision to go back to Palestine.
Yeah.
You didn't have to do that. Why did you?
Yeah. You sound like my dad. It's like why? Like,
yeah.
You can do work outside of Palestine. Because also he's like that generation where it's like, it's dangerous to be in Palestine, and he was all like, you can do work for Palestine outside of Palestine. And sometimes it's like, he was always like giving examples of like people like Edward Said and like all these, God bless him, and many others. But I wanted to be there. I have moved to so many cities, and I lived in so many places, and Palestine was always the most consistent place I had in my life. We were always going there when we were kids. I was growing up in Saudi Arabia. We were spending all our summers, our winters in Palestine, and then I would move somewhere else. I'd be somewhere else. It's the only place I ever came back to. Like, I don't have childhood friends. I don't know anybody that I went to school with when I was younger. I don't have all that. Palestine was that constant place for me, and
Palestine was your friend.
Palestine was my friend,
yeah.
And I felt, like it's like I'm lucky. I'm lucky that I can be here, because I'm always very aware of the number of Palestinians who it's like the dream to be in Palestine, to come even to visit Palestine, and they're not allowed. And I can come in and out of the borders, and I can be here. So I want to be here, and I think it's important that we do work there, and we are, we don't just talk about Palestine, but we, are part of it.
On that note, you got stuck in Jordan and they wouldn't let you come back in, and you went through some depression because of that?
Yeah, that's when I was denied entry. I was living in Ramallah at that time for a number of years, and I shot my first feature film, Salt of the Sea. And then I edited the film. It was a French co-production, so I was editing in France. And I finished the film, and I was coming back. I was accepted to Cannes, and it was before the Cannes premiere. I said the first premiere of the film is not going to be in Cannes, it's going to be in Palestine. And so we set up the premiere, and I was coming back to share the film with the cast and the crew, and it was going to be actually the first screening of the film in the world. And that's when I was denied entry, and then I wasn't allowed back for about 5 years.
5 years?
Yeah, that's why. So then I moved to Jordan because it was as close as I could be. And I had people bringing my stuff from my apartment in Ramallah to me. And I tried to get in from the airport. I tried to get in from the borders. I had a lawyer involved. And my lawyer finally came back and she said, you have a security issue.
Yeah.
And she's like, that means, A, we know that means nothing.
Yeah.
But B, that means they never, ever have to answer the question.
Yeah. Well, they're scared of your storytelling abilities.
Yeah,
I
well.
think, right? Yeah.
Well, it was at a period what's still going on. People are still getting, denied entry all the time, Palestinians and people who are friends of Palestinians. But at that period, it was really a moment where it was a lot of artists. It was a lot of writers, musicians, artists. I think it was very targeted at that time. Yeah.
You were far away yet so close, obviously, to Palestine, being in Jordan. I think you mentioned you were able to see parts of Palestine, obviously. You talked about depression and maybe some mental health challenges because of that. Can you elaborate?
Well, I found myself really depressed, that severing of my life. And I was in Jordan, and it was a city Amman for me was always a place, I think for a lot of Palestinians, you pass through to get to Palestine. And I had no relationship with the city, and I was there, and I was just gutted that I couldn't get home. I was having a relationship with somebody in Palestine. He eventually came to see me in Jordan. Then we got married.
Oh, there you go.
He's my husband now. But yeah, it was a really tough, few years. But I found myself. That's how my second film was born, really, because I found myself in that position of the majority of Palestinians in the world, which is that they cannot go to Palestine and they are refugees. And it really strikes you when you're just standing there and you see it. You see the lights of Jerusalem from Jordan. That's where that question came, what if I just kept walking? You start to think of these childish questions. And then I was born this story about a little boy who becomes a refugee in 1967, who's like, what if I just walk? What happens? They're not childish questions. They're the questions that anyone, I think, asks.
Yeah.
What are borders?
Yeah. So I want to get into the creative process with Palestine 36, but for that specific film, I'm just curious. Did I have an idea, and you lock yourself in a room and you just write this out? How does a creative process work for you?
For each one is different.
Okay.
But with that particular film,
what's the name?
It's called When I Saw You.
Lama
Shuftak. And the last scene in that film, I'm not going to say it now because that's going to be called a spoiler. But the last scene of the film was the first thing I thought about. So I started, and I don't usually write like that. But in this case, I imagined, I didn't even have the characters yet, but I imagined a child and a mother and this last scene in the film. And then I went backwards and I started to develop the story. And I was really interested, but it wasn't about today. It's set in the 60s, in the late 60s, because I was, I have a family that, we're from Bethlehem, and I kept growing up hearing all the time, everything that everybody said in every conversation was before 67, blah, blah, blah. Before 67, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what, this thing about what we were before 67 and what we became after and how life was after was, yeah.
Yeah. Two things I wanted to bring up to you. First, the center you created, the Dar Yusuf Nasri.
Jacir, yeah.
Jacir, you helped me out there, and research. Talk about that center, because I don't think a lot of people know about the work that you're doing there, which just blows my mind that you have the ability to do that.
So that's my family home, and My father is Yusuf Jacir, and my sister and I, and along with my father, because we don't really have a lot of family anymore in Bethlehem. After 1967, most of them became refugees, or most of them moved abroad to, support, to have a life, not under occupation. And it's a beautiful old house that was built in the late 1800s. And we're really lucky, again, that we're one of the few Palestinians that still have a home, because all the homes were razed to the ground. Yeah. And it's, that physical space is there, it exists. So we decided to do something with it, and we've opened it up as a sort of, community center, art residency. There's a lot of programs there, and it's my sister Emily, who runs the place. I've been so busy with Palestine 36, and it's really like Emily is the one who's really spearheading this incredible. It's basically the only female-led art center in Palestine. Entirely female-led, and it's incredible. There's different residency programs, and for people who come, they can work there. And she's been doing amazing stuff. I'm like on the side. I'm backing her.
So what are your parents feeding you all? I mean, this is a lot of success, a lot of drive. Is it za'atar?
It's za'atar. No, it's Saudi Arabia. We grew up in Saudi Arabia, so bored. Out of our minds.
Gotcha.
And I have a mother who always, when we were like, I'm bored, would be like, stand on your head and count your toes. Yeah. Figure it out. Yeah. I think we had to create our own world and our own stuff and how to entertain ourselves.
I'm going to have to take that from you and tell that to my daughters. Stand on your head and count your toes. That's a good one.
Yeah, I tell that to my daughter. And she's like, Yeah. It makes her crazy.
You also got to work with Edward Said. Talk about that.
So I left California and I went to Columbia to study film.
Yeah.
Edward Said was there. I always remember our first meeting in an elevator. Mm-hmm. He was, I got in the elevator, and then Edward Said got in the elevator, and I was like, oh my God, like in my mind, Edward Said, I'm like, what am I going to say? I have to say something. And I just introduced myself to him. I said, hi, my name's Annemarie. I'm just, you're incredible. And he said, what's your name? And I said, Annemarie. And he goes, Annemarie? What kind of Palestinian name is that? And I was like, I don't know, Edward. You tell me. And he was like, oh, you got me. And
well played.
Like, yeah. Like,
was it a project you all worked on together?
No, I never studied with him or worked on a project with him.
I thought there was a project that I read about. I could have been wrong, that he wrote something, or
he watched a really short film of mine and commented on it. It was like actually before like 20 Impossibles. Before I even went to film school, I was doing a lot of sort of experimental videos and I was editing. He'd seen something and written about it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
cool.
Huge.
Yeah. Do you have that somewhere?
I have it somewhere. Okay. Yeah.
Send us a picture. We'll try to put it on the screen. All right. Palestine 36. I have a lot of questions, and we talked offline. I've watched the movie or the film many times. The first thing I would want to know from you is, what do you want people to think about before going into the movie? Does that make sense? Like, what expectation do you want them to have?
Wow. I don't know. I don't like to read anything myself before going to see a film, and I don't like to watch trailers. I really try. I go into a film. I want to not know anything. But I think the thing about our work as Palestinians is that it's so hard to get it out there and to get it seen and to get it to the audience. It is through trailers and posters and conversations and things like that. But I guess I've been driving some of our distributors crazy, I will say, because we have different distributors in each country, and they cut trailers or show scenes that are from, that they think is good for their audience, will attract their audience into the cinema. Mm-hmm. And I hate when there's too much information, like they've said too much, or they've shown too much of a scene, or it's a really emotional part of the film, or it's a really
Gosh, you're going to hate this interview.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Sorry in advance.
I have to just, they're like, we know our audience, we know what gets them in. I'm like, I know, but why did you show them that? Like, I want them to experience it fresh. I want people in their seats and like they see the story and they follow. It's a slow burn, the film. The shape of the film for me is important, like how it gets from beginning to end. It's hard for a filmmaker when there's like moments that are taken out of that to be shown.
Yeah. That's the most politically correct non-answer I've ever heard. Kudos to you.
Okay.
Very creative. So what does the film, just going back to you as a person, what does the film reveal about you?
That's a good question. I think films look like their directors.
Elaborate.
Yeah.
Please.
I don't know. I mean, I think that the film is just honest. I'm proud of our people. I love our people. I'm proud of our people. I want to honor our people, and I want to critique our people, and I want to push our people. These are all things that I have within me, and I think that's what the film is, that it's very, very specifically about us, for us, made by us. It's like a huge love letter to our people and everything that we've, lived through and continue to live through, that we are also free, that we insist to be free, and we have to be free in everything we do. And that we will get there. I believe that very much, and we will get there. And I think the film is also about that we come from a history of resistance. We have been resisting all our lives. Our parents, our grandparents, it's in our blood, it's in our DNA. And yeah, I guess maybe that's the answer.
Yeah, that's a great answer. You said in past films that you see yourself in both yin and yang characters. For Palestine 36, where do you find yourself? Is it Yusuf? Is it Khalud?
All of them. Afra, the little girl. Karim, the little boy. The grandmother. I think all of them.
I would have gone with Khalud. Her tricks are pretty creative, just generally speaking.
Yeah, maybe.
Can you talk about her character a little bit more? Because I think it was a creation of two different characters.
Yeah, exactly. It was a creation of two characters. Palestinian women were very active even then in the national movement and in feminist movements in the 30s. And they were women who were founding newspapers, and they were journalists, not just in Palestine, but in Lebanon and Syria and Egypt. And some of them were writing under male names to protect themselves, to be taken seriously, but in a patriarchal society, but also to protect themselves, because these were all places with colonial governments, and, being a journalist was dangerous and had, repercussions. Like today. Yeah. So Khulud comes from that. And then there was a socialite in Jerusalem who was really mixing with the British public, and there was sort of a just regular normal life in Jerusalem with the upper classes, in which they were socially mixing, and they were conversing and partying and playing tennis and arguing and also protesting, and I think the Palestinian upper class was trying to play the game, but on the same level as the British, like to use their language, to go to conferences, to go, that was happening. And what was happening, of course, in the countryside was something very different. So Khulud was a kind of a mix of those characters, and it was pretty amazing to work with Yasmin on that role. She didn't know. She said, I didn't know we had women like this. Even as Palestinians, our own history is so hard to. She said, I grew up in Lebanon as a refugee. I didn't know we had women like this. And then she started, doing the research, and she's like so proud of that.
Yeah.
And it meant a lot to her, She's like, our own history, we don't even know.
Her in that role, like, that's a brilliant fit. How did you know that, at what moment did you know she was the right person for it?
Yasmin?
Yeah.
I've known Yasmin for a long time, and I met her when I made Salt of the Sea, and I was in Paris editing before Salt of the Sea, because I had, like I said, I have this French co-producer, and she was there, and she just had this real, fire in her. She's a really passionate, really emotional and fiery Palestinian woman. And we joked. I remember we went out one night, and we're like, one day we're going to work together. And I thought about her, and we've been in touch, and she's done a lot of other films and TV. And in none of my films there was really a role for her in the previous films. But with this one, it was like, it's got to be Yasmin. I just imagined Khulud when I was writing. She looked like her. It was her.
You mentioned yesterday at the showing that she had the ability to switch dialect.
Yeah.
and languages. I
Yeah.
mean, was that, did you know that ahead of time, that was the plan? Or
Well, we talked about it. You know, she's now living abroad, but she had been living for a number of years in California. She was working on Quantico. Her accent is a little hard to figure out when she speaks English. It's a bit French, but now it's become more American. And Khulud had to have a British accent.
Mr. Secretary, another drink.
I'm actually fine. You've gathered quite the group this evening.
Yes, I did.
I'm not sure I know everyone.
Well, to your left, Mr. Yafa Oranges himself owns half the groves from here to the sea.
Well, we are what we eat.
So we knew that we would get a dialect coach to work with her on that accent. And they worked a lot together, you know, with the dialect coach. And then she had a Palestinian dialect coach for the Jerusalem accent because she's not from Jerusalem. She's originally from Jaffa, you know, growing up in Lebanon, and her Arabic accent is, you know, she's an actor and she does the work. She really nailed the British English really well. And the dialect coach was, you know, Chris was really like, she got it. She, you know, he's always listening. And then like sometimes she would slip and he'd be like, no. And then I said, but I want her to find a different way to speak when she like one-ups Wingate.
This may not be the best place to bring a lady, however.
Indeed.
Do you two know each other?
I don't believe we've had the pleasure.
I was hoping my parties were more memorable than that.
Khulud Atif, Captain Wingate.
My apologies, madam. Your English is impressive. Where did you learn?
In boarding school. And Oxford. And you?
Excuse me, I have work to do. Captain.
A Muslim woman. Can't say I blame you.
code switching.
Code switching, and we do that. And I, you know, and for her it was like a very natural thing. And we had this conversation immediately. We were like, yes, this is what she has to do. And he was like, no, but she has to be British. She can say it. She can do it in a British way. I'm like, I know she can do it, but she's not British.
Yeah.
And Khulud knows that about herself too. Khulud is not trying to be British. She's not trying to become British. You know, she has British friends. She knows how to speak English, you know, better than, you know, people who speak English. But yeah.
My view, she's the most powerful character in the film.
Yeah.
That's my personal perspective. Because it reminds us women were leading the way, whether it was in the village or whether it was in the press. They were always finding a way to do it and push through.
Yeah.
So I found her character fascinating.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorite lines of hers is when she says, I am the press.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like,
Mic drop moment.
yeah. Yeah.
So do you realize how powerful this film is? I mean, do you understand the weight of what you've accomplished here?
I don't think I know yet what this film.
I'm telling
I'm
you,
like,
you've accomplished a lot.
Thank you. It's a beautiful compliment from you.
Yeah.
I know that it was an incredible challenge that felt, I mean, it was like a mountain that this is why I don't know. It was so hard to do this. It was so hard to make this film, you know, and all films are difficult, but this one really almost killed me. And so I don't know. I feel like I joke, people are like, what are you doing next? I'm like, I'm just recovering. I really need to recover. I need to take care of my health. I need to take care, all of us, and the fact that we're still in a genocide, everything that has happened to us in the last few years, I really would my production designer who died for this film, for 2 years, straight. He went to Thailand with his family after we finished and
leave me alone.
Just slept on a beach for 4 weeks. He came back and he was like,
yeah,
I'm back. And I'm like, I want to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just for the audience, you started production in Palestine, I believe. You did a lot of work in sort of learning how to grow the crops, creating the military vehicles, and then October 7th happens.
Yeah.
You had to move to Jordan and then restart, correct?
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. We spent a year doing that. I mean, the production designer and producer and I, more than a year, we're starting to, scout the locations and then started the prep, especially on that village, which I still mourn the loss of the fact that we never were able to shoot in that village that we had planted those crops and restored and renovated and did, so much. There's locations that I mourn. I still think about. I mean, we prepped them so much. We built so many things that were lost.
The one thing I never knew, and maybe this is me just being ignorant, is we grew cotton.
Yeah.
That wasn't a thing. Like, it was always olives.
Yeah.
Where did the cotton come from?
Yeah.
How did you figure that out?
Cotton, because I saw photographs first. I saw a lot of photographs of Palestinians in cotton fields. And I was like oh, wow, cotton? And then I started to, look it up. And it was one of, the main things. It was like cotton, wheat. There was like a number of things and we were exporting.
Was it real cotton really quick? Did you actually grow that, or
I had the actors learn how to pick cotton. We had a lot of lessons on with like the production, before shooting. The actors went through different things. All the villagers had to learn how to pick cotton because we don't know how to pick cotton.
Yeah.
It's not that difficult, by the way, but it's work, So it's a mix in the film because there was a whole story with the cotton. We didn't know that cotton is now contraband. Like, Palestinians are forbidden from. So we started planting the tobacco in the field. Then we started to wanted to plant the cotton, and we understood we were not allowed to plant cotton. We're not actually allowed to plant tobacco either. The Israelis don't allow us to plant cotton.
But you did anyway.
We did, we do things.
Yeah.
There was all kinds of things happening.
No need to say anything more. Yeah, we got you. Yeah.
Palestinians.
Yeah.
We figure out our way. And that also in Jordan, you can't plant cotton.
Yeah.
So it was...
You can't plant cotton in Jordan?
Also, because there's all kinds of weird trade agreements and things that went on in peace discussions, peace talks, and who's going to be exporting cotton in the region? And it's Israel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Free cotton.
Yep. Free the cotton.
Free the cotton.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of... So again, maybe you could tell me, Ed, don't ask that question. I'm not going to answer it. Just some spoiler alerts kind of thing.
We're doing spoilers.
Yeah. The Christian making fun of a Christian. So the priest was walking with his son, Kareem.
Yeah.
Where are you two off to?
To our village, Al-Basma.
Permits. You too?
He's only a child.
The hills are bandit territory.
He's not a bandit. He's my son.
Aren't we all, Father? How can a priest have a son?
It's permitted in our faith.
Horny rascals. Up.
The soldiers stopped him and they said, "You have a kid. What kind of priest has a kid?" And then he says, "My religion," and completely mocking them immediately.
Yeah.
That's so clear. That's what's happening today to an extent too, because the Palestinian Christians, not much respect or love or appreciation given to them with the U.S. and the Western powers. What made you come up with that scene? And was there a hidden meaning there?
Well, yeah. I mean, first of all, like the fact that Western Christianity does not recognize Eastern Christianity, which is always so crazy because it comes from us.
Yeah.
Right?
You would think they would respect that.
You
Yeah.
think they would respect that, but there's no respect. They're not really Christians, and like that's the feeling. And the fact, there are certain traditions. So the priest that, he's Melkite priest in the film, Eastern Catholic in Arabic. They can get married, they can have kids. And he is based on the producer's grandfather, actually, who had like 11 kids and was also... Are we allowed to say stuff like this? Yeah. Anyway, weapons.
Yeah.
He was supporting the revolt.
Yeah.
So he was sort of loosely based on him. It was like amazing that the British that were in Palestine were really thinking. I mean, like Wingate is an example of that, and also the soldiers, that they were like the protectors of Christianity. Yeah. They were the ones who this is Jerusalem, this is Bethlehem, and it's like the biblical places that they grew up reading about, and now they're in charge of them, and completely not seeing the fact that there are humans living there, indigenous Christians who are part of that land, and but there's that separation of whatever they want to see it from a certain point of view. That scene for me was about really though the fact that Karim is watching his father be humiliated and not really confronting it. Also, they're clearly making fun of him. They take their stuff. There's no sort of response from the father. The main part of that scene for me is the little boy witnessing so many things at that time, and one of them is that scene. And then they're in the church afterwards, and they're preparing for mass, and he's upset, and the father's like, "What's wrong with you?" And he's just like, he's disturbed, but he doesn't know. He doesn't tell his father, and then his father, they have that conversation where his father says, "You have to endure. You have to learn how to endure."
Powerful scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just reminded me, and again, we all interpret things differently, but that soldier that was making fun of him was sort of like Huckabee to me. I don't know, not respecting or appreciating, Christianity, Eastern Christianity, as it's labeled. Yeah. The other thing that was fascinating was the Christian Zionism when Wingate. By the way, you got to talk about Wingate. He's a bit Epstein to me. I don't know. We could.
Oh my God, Epstein.
He's a bit Epstein to me because he used to walk around naked with his.
He used to walk around naked with his troops. He wore garlic around his neck. He wore an alarm clock. I made him have long hair in the film, a little bit long, which is it's fiction. I'm making a fiction film. I have a little bit of a lot of poetic license.
Yeah.
But for me, that was because in actuality, Wingate never took showers. His uniform was always dirty. He was he was really doing his own thing out there in the countryside. And I wanted that sort of longish hair just to sort of show that he was a little bit unkempt. It was part of that idea. But yeah.
He was so passionate about the religion and Jerusalem being given back to the Jews. That's where I saw the Zionism take place, but it didn't feel like for the Jewish side, and I'm trying to say this correctly, it was really just political identity, whereas for the British, this was a religious.
For Wingate, it definitely was.
Okay.
He was a religious fanatic. He was a Christian Zionist. You read about him and kind of touched with he's thinking he was on a divine mission. He was the protector of the Holy Land. And Wingate had a very religious upbringing, a very strict religious upbringing, like many people in the military. And then he came to Palestine, and he was just I think he's really started to imagine it's this megalomania, that he was something really important in that kind of Jerusalem syndrome or whatever it is. Yeah.
They even had a cross on the flag, and I remember that one scene.
Yeah.
I don't know, was it the general or whatever?
The Palestinian, the rebels?
Yeah, the British were in a room, and they're like, how do they have a cross on the flag?
Yeah.
And that's abnormal. What are they doing?
Yeah.
I thought that was fascinating as well.
Yeah, and Wingate says, "What do they know about Christ?"
Yeah.
And Thomas says, "You must be kidding."
Yeah. He wasn't kidding, unfortunately.
Yeah, he wasn't kidding, unfortunately. Yeah. I really sometimes wonder, with Christian Zionists, what they are thinking and what they're talking about. How can you be in, the Holy Land?
Yeah, yeah.
And not at all see what's happening. It's today, I don't understand how Christians in America do not see what is happening to the Christian population. Not it should be considered about everybody, but if Christianity is their thing, you do not see that Christians are being driven out of all of these holy cities. These places the population, is being ethnically cleansed, and I don't understand how they don't see that, how they justify that.
Yeah, no, they see it, they just don't care.
Yeah,
I think at this point they see it for sure. They just don't care.
Well, yeah, everybody sees everything now.
Yeah. So where I'm going with these religious questions is it was very clear that if you're Palestinian, you're Palestinian, whether you're Christian or you're Muslim or even Jewish.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
Were you trying to deliver a message about the unity of the people?
I was not trying to deliver a message. Okay. I don't like to try to deliver a message. I don't like that.
Were you nudging a message?
No, but it's part of being authentic to what it is, what that place is.
Yeah.
What it was. Palestine, that all those villages were mixed villages, and they were Christian and Muslim mixed. So this village in the film, Al Basma, is a mix of two villages, Al Lifta near Jerusalem, and Al Bassa up in the north, where the incident that happens in the end of the film actually happens. It's a sort of mix of those two villages are Christian Muslim villages. They had churches, they had mosques. The population was very mixed. I think this is also something that the West has a really hard time comprehending, that we are multi-ethnic, multi-religious community. We're like normal, yeah. There were like Muslim rebel leaders. There were Christian rebel leaders. They were in the same rebel groups, units, or whatever. I mean, it's
but I feel most history books try to hide that fact, and I think what you've done is really exposed that was the reality.
Yeah. I mean, it was. Yeah, it's the real. It's like people ask me, how come you have like such strong women in the film, and how come you have like this, like the village has Christians and Muslims in it? And I'm like, but it's not like I'm trying to send a message. It's just what it was.
Yeah. Meet our grandparents.
Meet our grandmas.
Yeah. The Christians and the Muslims came together, the Palestinians. I got to ask this. Again, I'm going to try to ask it correctly, and we can edit it out if I don't do this right. But where were the Jewish Palestinians in that fight? Were they just joining the Zionists and not supporting the larger Palestine?
It's not really addressed in the film because, I don't know. I will say that I'm going to answer this, but I could be easily proven wrong by a historian on this. The Jewish communities, the Palestinian Jewish communities in Hebron and Khalil and Jerusalem, there were cities where there were Jewish, communities. It wasn't a huge community, but it was part of the Palestinian community. I don't know in the 30s at that point if they had sided with the Zionists at that point or were sort of somewhere in the middle. It's an interesting question. I don't address it at all in the film, but it is an interesting one. I know Palestinian Jews who say that their families rejected Zionism. Like I know some Palestinian Jews from Khalil, and they're like, we didn't want to become Israeli. Their family did not want to become Israelis, and they were forced to take the IDs because they were Jewish. But I don't know during the revolt exactly where that community stood. It's an interesting question.
Sounds like you have another movie.
Yeah, exactly.
This sparked some interest there, maybe. Yeah. So there was a part of the movie that really tore me up. I mean, there was many parts, but it was when the elders got together and said, the Zionists were taking land, or the settlers were taking land and burning crops and things like that. Well, let's go talk to them. Let's go have a normal conversation with them. And a group of them go, and immediately, even before I even knew what was going to happen, I was like, no, that's a bad idea. You can't negotiate with Zionists. You really can't.
Yeah. Which is what Yusuf says to his dad.
Exactly. Yeah. So obviously that was a very powerful moment and a very sad moment where people are going to see that. Were you, again, I'm going to say sending a message. I know you don't like sending messages, but
the mailman sends messages.
Yeah, there you go. History, what is it? What's the saying? History does not repeat itself, but it rhymes. Were you basically saying this is the same logic that's going on today, where people think you can sort of intellectualize these conversations with Zionists and maybe win them over?
Well, I want to say that particular scene, so I have to give credit to Salma Dabbagh. I don't know if you know her. She's a Palestinian novelist. When I started, conceiving of this project, she developed the project with me, and we had a lot of back and forth. And this scene comes from her, that the villagers would go to speak to the settlers without the British. Yeah. And I really liked that because I thought, there's a moment of like, okay, let's see if we'll take it into our own hands. And I think that's very natural and normal for a village and a group of people that have been like living for thousands of years somewhere. Like, okay, why do we have to like go through the British? Like, let's talk directly. Yusuf is like, you don't negotiate with Zionists. They only want land. They don't want to negotiate. Yeah. And then this group of men go, and they head towards, thing. And from the like settler point of view, what do they see? He just sees a bunch of
mob.
like mob coming like up, towards him, towards the settlement. I don't think in that scene, no, I mean, I don't think I was trying to say something about now, but you can say something about now.
Yeah.
With all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can, I mean, again, it definitely rhymes, right? History definitely rhymes.
Yeah.
So
like in so many ways, history rhymes. I mean, like it's happened. It's like what you're saying is, it's going on now, and there's like what is there to talk about? What is there? There's, yeah.
Was that a legit, like a scene that was actually that happened in real life? Was that what you were saying? Did that, or is that
did it
that
happen in real life? No.
Okay.
Like that doesn't have, I think, a specific like historical. I'm sure that it happened, but yeah.
But that wasn't. You weren't using a specific moment that actually.
No,
happened.
not a specific incident. No.
Yeah. The conversation. So this again, we're bringing it back to today. The conversation about resistance. There's a scene where Khulud is talking to Yusuf. He shows up at her doorstep and she says, "Stop. Don't resist, or put your arms down." And he said, "No, we have to resist. There's no other choice." Again, this is the debate that we're having today.
Yeah.
Until this very moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And for her, because she's someone who believes in the revolt, but she also believes in the leadership, and the leadership is getting into negotiations and like, okay, maybe we'll find a solution to this, but we need the rebels to like chill out a little bit so that we can like talk. And for Yusuf, it's like, for what? For who? In whose benefit? I mean, it's, I think Khulud and Yusuf's, relationship is really interesting because they are, of course, completely different classes, completely different lives. They connect about the revolt. But that moment is when Yusuf, I think, he gets disappointed with a lot of things in Jerusalem and a lot of things with that, in particular with that couple that he works with. Mostly Amir, but in that moment, he understands that Khulud also is saying something, like the party line is like, now we have to do this, and he doesn't think that's the way to go.
And it wasn't the way to go.
And it wasn't, yeah.
Yeah. Talk about Khulud. First of all, do you know who DJ Khaled is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Was Amir based on DJ Khaled? Just throwing it out there.
Oh my God. Yeah, Amir is based on a lot of people. Dhafar, who plays Amir, he's like, I hate this character, right? I hate this person. Like, Dhafar is like super, very, very passionate about Palestine. He's like, I got to pay this guy. But he's got to find, as an actor, he's got to be the guy, and he's got to support the guy and defend the guy. And we talked a lot about that, about drawing parallels today, like the fact that there are so many people today who are emirs, who think like, okay, like a little bit, it's good for business. Like, let's be modern, let's be progressive, let's talk, let's have dialogue. But it's not really dialogue, right? It's just like sort of agreeing to this, let's do things in this this way that is, basically screwing over everybody else.
See, I didn't take it that way.
Yeah.
I took it as greed.
As greed?
Because he wanted to become, they were going to make me mayor.
Yeah. I mean, it's his ego.
Yeah.
I mean, it's his ego, but it's like, let's... for me, it's also that it's his ego, but also like, this is like, let's be modern. Like, this is the way the world is going. And so he's being smart. He thinks he's being smart.
Yeah. He represents a lot of, and I'm not going to get you in trouble, but a lot of the other Arab countries. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
We can definitely draw up parallels today. But there were 2 mayors in Palestine in different cities that were getting checks from the Zionist Commission, and I was really interested in that. That's sort of the character of Amir started. I read about that the Office of Arab Affairs, that was part of the Zionist Commission, was sending checks to various Arab mayors and other people, this was happening in the 1920s. And I was super interested in that like there was like the Office of Arab Affairs at the Zionist Commission. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
And that they formed the Muslim Association in order to break the Christian Muslim associations, which was a national movement and a secular national movement. They wanted to break that, of course, because divide and conquer is the only way.
Yeah.
So that they founded these organizations. And it's like, also, we know that story very well today, and it's still going on. It's like incredible. Okay, this is where Amir was born, like between like all of this, you know, these stories of.
I usually don't want to smack somebody, but I want to smack him.
Yeah.
Through the whole film.
Yeah.
Honestly,
from the beginning.
From the beginning, he just
nice, so good looking and charming.
That's just not my thing, but yeah. But he felt off from the get go.
Yeah.
He felt off from the get go. So
yeah.
it
so
just,
you have a good sense.
I don't know. I saw DJ Khaled. I don't know.
From the beginning.
From the beginning.
My God. Yeah.
Yeah. The symmetry as well for me, seeing when they obliterated the press, right?
Yeah.
Khalid's press. To me, that was symbolic of today and the social media banning and the people being removed from social media.
Yeah.
Again, we're just seeing it in a different format. It just, it blows my mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They shut down the printing presses. It's like what we see today. It's like, shadow banning there. It's just like tear up the printing presses, destroy the presses and prevent, there are like blocks, when you look at the archives, like the newspaper archives, you see like weeks of like nothing. There's like missing blocks because everything was shut down and then it was like up and running again. People were trying to put out pamphlets or like other ways, but it's and fake news as well, like placing articles in the papers. That was also to me like, wow, that's what's like happening today. And like to know that like in the 30s that, that something that the Zionist Commission was doing was planting articles, in the Arab papers in Arabic.
Amir was doing that for him.
Yeah. So,
by the way, I wanted to ask you, I can't remember the guy's name, but they banned him from Palestine. There was a list at the very end in the newspaper when the kid was handing out the news.
Yeah.
And one of the individuals that were banned from Palestine, his last name was Khalidi.
Yeah.
Is that are they related to
those?
Rashid?
Are all those are real names. Like,
is that
all
Rashid
those
Khalidi though, the author? Is that
related?
Yeah, related.
I'm sure related, but I don't know how.
Okay.
But yeah, like all those names that are mentioned in that moment after the kid hands the pamphlet, those are our people.
The scene where and tell me if I'm going to ruin too much here. Seriously, I'll stop. Where he's wearing the white mask and he's pointing to who was part of the resistance. Do we know who that is?
Do you know who that is?
I hate Amir, so I just blame him for
Oh
everything.
my God.
I know Amir probably wouldn't go to the village though, but yeah.
No, it's not Amir. It's a guy from the village. And then we see him a couple of times in the film in the village. He's sort of always dressed a little bit different. He's like,
did I miss that?
You'll see it now. You got to watch it again.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
So definitely not Amir.
No, that's not Amir. That's the village Amir.
But would a person watching it have caught that? Or
some people have caught it. Somebody 2 nights ago said, "Oh, like they figured it out." But a lot of people understand it's a collaborator from the village. They don't remember who it is until they go back. Mm-hmm. But there's also because there was a scene I cut out that probably clarified that more. But when in the editing process, we ended up removing. We had to remove a few things. It's editing. So yeah, that'll be clear in the director's cut.
There we go. You got to help us out a little bit here. I thought one of the most powerful statements made was, I can't remember his name, the good guy, the good British guy that was supportive. Thomas, where he just looked at Khalid and said, "I quit Palestine." And I see so many people saying that right now, to be honest with you. I quit Palestine. It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
Really, it's frustrating because of us, right? Our inability to unite as an Arab or Muslim or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But the fact that he said, "I quit Palestine," I thought was such a powerful phrase.
Yeah.
Where did you come up with that? I mean, how did you know to place that at that very moment?
Yeah. Well, when they're in the cafe together, and she says to him, "Thomas, I'm not a tourist here." And it's like, because, living in Palestine, it's just like a lot of people, they come and they're like active and then they're like, I'm done with this, right?
Like a job kind of thing.
It's like a job, or it's like, it's over, or they've had enough of it, or they get disappointed. And so then it's like we don't do, like, that's us. Like, we can't, like, it's our lives. Like, we can't just like, be done with it. For me, she says that and he doesn't really, falls on deaf ears. But then when the shit hits the fan, he's like, I quit. Like, I'm done. And then we see, Khulud standing there. I think, when you are committed to something, you have to be committed to it. It's a privilege to be able to, like, I'm done. I don't want to be. I remember a guy I know that was a photographer in Lebanon, and he was in a refugee camp, and he was taking photos of people. And this little girl says to him, like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm taking, pictures." And she says, "What? Are you a tourist?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm a tourist." And she said, "I wish I could be a tourist one day." This little girl, like the concept of being a tourist.
Yeah. So the I Quit Palestine, to me, for many in the diaspora, I believe that many of them have quit Palestine. And again, because they think there's no point or whatever it is. So that was important to me. The way I took it too, though, is that he quit Khulud.
Yeah.
That I think there was a connection there, and that he just gave up on her as well.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah. That's very fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that like a hidden?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
For me,
there's something. One. There we go.
Yeah.
And because I think Wingate mentions, we all know why you care about the
Yes.
Arabs.
Yeah.
Same
Exactly.
idea.
Yeah.
So there was another moment that we go with Khulud, who did not want the violence, did not necessarily want the resistance. She wanted to go more of the political route. Then shit hits the fan, and then Yali Shabab.
Yeah.
Let's go, men. Let's go, guys.
Yeah.
Do you see that happening now as well?
You love Khulud.
I think she's amazing.
Yeah.
I love my wife, just to be clear.
Yeah.
My wife. Just like, we got to make that clear to everybody. Yeah. I think Khulud, to me, reminds me of my mom.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. She just didn't take any crap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. I mean, that moment of, like, when Khulud's like, Yalla Shabab, it's like, she's already got that in her. And then she's like, okay, let's see if the political process, she's like, into the, organized democratic process, and like, okay, let's follow the leaders and let's do this. And then, it's like her moment of like, you know what? Fuck it. Like, they just divided the whole country, like, as they liked. It wasn't a shock to her, but it is a shock. I think it's a shocking moment for everybody at that table.
Partition offers a possibility of obtaining a solution of the problem, which does justice to the rights and aspirations of both the Arab and the Jew. Half a loaf is better than no bread at all. As to the British people, they are bound to honor to the utmost.
شكله وصلتهم الأخبار.
يلا يا شباب.
For Amir, I think you have no sympathy for him. But I think for me, like, that scene is, Amir kind of realizes that he was thinking and believing in something.
See, I don't agree
for
with
whatever
that.
his own,
I didn't make the movie, so I can't debate you. But I felt it was, again, symbolic of Arab countries that care more about money and power than doing what was right.
Yeah.
So I had zero sympathy. And this is me just being, since October 7th, maybe just burned out.
Yeah.
But I have like no patience for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's rough.
But you got to remember that the Nakba hasn't happened yet, right? And this idea of partitioning Palestine, that actually it's a project to ethnically cleanse the land, is not, for them at that moment, is such a, like, not even an inkling that something like that could happen.
Yeah. How did you balance out the violence and not enough, not too much?
Yeah, I shot other scenes of violence. When I said I took out some scenes, so there was even more violent scenes, and we shot them, and they were really intense. I don't like to see, personally, I'm not into graphic violence. I don't need to see it. Mm-hmm. I feel it. I think, violence is, when you feel like humiliation, or like you can connect the dots, and you don't need to see what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen, and you feel it. I'd rather, that, and I don't, the film is not actually, you don't really see anything.
Yeah.
But you definitely feel something.
What's funny, you met my daughter yesterday, and I wish you would have sat next to her, because she's watched it so many times with me at this point. She knew when something was going to happen. The problem is she would signal it to everybody around her. So she would just cover her face like 2 seconds before.
Oh my God.
So she knew when some of the violent scenes were coming.
Yeah.
I want to know, what do we not know? What are the Easter eggs in the film? What should we be looking for? Give us some hints here. Because there's, again, so much depth. And I'm sure if I watch it another 5 times, I'm going to get more information.
Yeah.
Help us out here a little bit. Give us something that nobody has told you. Have told it nobody else.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because you said you've seen it 4 times.
5 times, but yeah.
5 times. Because my sister's also watching it a lot. And she's like, Annemarie, every time, like I'm discovering, like people have to like see this film again and again. There's like each time you really discover another layer and another thing.
It could have been a series.
It could have been a series.
Yeah.
And actually, when I was trying to finance the film, it was proposed to like be a series, and I don't want it to be a series because I want it to be like an experience from beginning to end, and hour and a half, 2 hours. That's it. I don't want it, but it could be. Yeah. Easter eggs in the film. I don't know. You have to help me out.
Here's why I'm asking that question. It just feels like you deliberately, the way you set it up, and maybe it's your brilliance and you didn't even know it. It just felt like there was so much. Ehab, our director, mentioned it, even the clothing and the way things were set up. Everything, you were paying attention to every single detail. So I have to assume there were just things that, unless you're a historian or somebody that's specializing in some of the stuff.
Look, historians, people who specialize in this period, know that there are certain moments that are not chronologically exactly correct.
Okay.
And they were correct in the script. I'll give you an example. The scene in Jaffa with Khalid when the barrel breaks. That incident occurs actually in 1935, and it's a well-known incident.
Got it.
That port workers discovered this barrel. And in the script, it was in 1935. But then when I was like, because the script was playing around with chronology in a very different way. And then I changed it because it was too smart. It was too like intellectual and like, I was like, that's not what I'm interested in doing, right? Like I'm not trying to, I wanted the film to be, seen by our people and us, and that, it's ours and it's not like, art house thing. Anyway.
For the record, Annemarie still hasn't answered my question.
Yeah.
Give me an Easter egg.
So that's an Easter egg, like that the barrel 35. No.
No.
But any historian will see that.
Yeah.
They will know about that incident, and they will know that it's not 1936.
Okay, here, I'll ask a specific question.
Yeah.
At the very end, somebody's running. Where is this person running to?
Where do you think she's running to?
You did that yesterday, and it worked
but I want to
brilliantly.
know. But also, I'm interested to what you think.
So there's 2 different. One, Khalid going into the line, that's one. I think that was the question yesterday. Where was the girl running to? I would hope she was running towards whatever her mom was. Because her mom said, I need to be here in case my daughter comes back, right, looking for me. Yeah.
It was interesting because yesterday somebody in the audience said, the mom said, never look back, keep going. So she thought that. But for me, the mother says, this is the only place she knows to find me, and she stays behind. I never answer this question because I like to leave it open. I want the audience to take have their own conclusion of that moment. But I will answer it now, and I never answer it. There you go.
Official clip. We're going to cut this right here.
Exactly. Is that Afra is dreaming of Jerusalem all the time, like the big city, and like she like harasses Yusuf every time he comes back, and like bring me the stamps and tell me about what you saw, and tell me about like her mom goes to the market in Jerusalem. She never goes to Jerusalem. It's like all these people from the village are going back and forth, and she's like, I want to go to Jerusalem. I want to go. My mom won't let me. And then in this, moment in the film, she ends up, the mom's like, just run, and she, goes through the hills, and she ends up in Jerusalem. And for me, there it is in front of her, and she understands something that she's got to get back, and she's going back. And when the grandmother tells her in that scene between the grandmother and daughter, and she says, you have something stronger than the entire British Empire. And she says, what is it? And she says, you will know. She knows then.
Wow. Appreciate it. No, that's powerful. That's powerful. Thank you. I mean, I could stop the interview here and I'd be okay. That's a big one. And then Kareem. So again, I had to be very careful how I phrase it. So
Kareem, the boy, not the actor.
No, the boy. And the action he took at the very end. I'll just say it that way.
Yeah.
Kareem is Christian.
Yeah.
You decided it being a Christian kid taking an action. Was that on purpose as well? Did I ask the question correctly and safely?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's a fair way to ask it. I mean, it's just that. I mean, it's not necessarily because he's Christian. Of course, it's not because he's Christian that he does that. But for like the story is that his father and him have a very specific relationship, and his father in that scene where he's like, "You have to endure. You have to learn how to endure." That fighting thing, and this is a really innocent child at the beginning of the film, and he doesn't know what's going on, and then he witnesses what's happening in small ways at first, and then in this like massive way. Unlike Afra, she's not in the village when all this like shit hits the fan.
Yeah,
he is, and he can't endure. He just can't take it. And we sometimes really expect that people can endure, like witness and like have such violence happen to them.
But couldn't one argue that he was enduring? Maybe not that most ideal way.
You could think of it that way.
Yeah. So I know it wasn't because he's Christian. I think the message I got that the resistance was for, again, going back to what we talked about earlier, it was for everybody.
Yeah.
And everybody was experiencing loss and felt like they needed some retribution.
Yeah.
Right? And he was the example of that.
Yeah. I mean, each of the characters, right, at the end, they each sort of face that moment in different ways.
Yeah.
Speaking of violence, your earlier question, you see what happens to him at the very end. Like you physically see it. We shot that, but it was like too much.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see that.
Yeah.
I don't want to see that.
Yusuf's brother ends up leaving prison. Is there a reason you did that at the very end? Why not just leave him in prison and forgotten?
Well, so Khulud sort of in a way uses Amir, like this is like her last thing, and it's in a way I think an apology. They don't know what's happened to Yusuf, of course, but that last moment she has with Yusuf is not they're at different ends of a argument or whatever. And there it's like she comes back with Amir to get him out. They know that the boy is in prison, and because of their status, they can get him out. Amir can get him out. So she stays with Amir, gets Amir to get there, and they get him out. And I really love that walk he has across the courtyard, because he's just like, you see that he looks like a completely different person.
Yeah.
And I it's in a way, like all of our men who go to prison and they're like, innocent. There's something that is lost. There's something that changes, and he comes out. We don't know what he's endured, but we know he's endured something in there. And he comes out, but he also comes out a different person. But there's a dignity about it as well. And then he goes, and then Khulud is done. She's done her job.
So you just proved why I'm not a director or an artist in any way. So I appreciate that. So look, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, people...
I'm so stuck in the film that I was like 50 years from 1936.
30, yeah.
No, you mean from now.
From now, from today. I really believe this movie is going to be studied. I believe it's going to be in universities, that people are going to dissect it probably much better than I'm able to do it. But what do you want people to remember about this movie? Like the one takeaway 50 years from now or 100 years from now?
Like I want to say, like I hope it's studied. I hope that, people watch it and they talk about it, and they connect with it, and they like it's the story of Palestine that is so important and has been missing. When I think about the film, for me, what is it? What would it mean in 50 years? I think it's really a testament of what we can do under the worst conditions, the darkest moment of our history, that this team came together and against all odds made this film, which is insane. Like that, it was such a challenge. It was already impossible before we started and before October 7th. It was like completely crazy that we could fathom doing such a film in Palestine. You know, we're like, we are under military occupation. We can't like do anything. We can't, you know, we have no freedom of movement. And here we are like preparing to shoot this huge film with hundreds of crew and cast and people blowing up things, you know, doing this, doing that. Like, it was crazy. And the way we functioned was like, let's just be free. Like, let's pretend we're living like as anyone else in the world and we can make the film that we want to make. And all of us approached it that way. And then, boom, October 7th, and everything was like, genocide begins. Everything was like, you know, lost. Everything was, you know, 300 times more difficult. And we kept at it. And I think that this film, for me, is that it's a testament to the fact that as artists, as filmmakers, as people, like we can do this, and we will do it no matter what's happening. This is what we can do. Nothing is going to kill us. Nothing.
And just a few more questions. You had, I'm just curious if this was on purpose, because I think a lot of other directors would have missed this. You had an Afro-Palestinian in the film, and she had spoken up in the film. Was that on purpose?
Everything is on purpose.
Okay.
Everything you see on the screen is on purpose, mostly. There could be sometimes there are mistakes.
So there is a message then, going back to
no, there's no message.
See, got you there.
Yeah, Mariam Abu Khalid. She's part of the women's group, and that was like, you know, this group of women that protested. Historically, the women who protested in front of the commissioner's office, they talked to the high commissioner. They went to Cairo for like feminist conferences, and there were women from all over Palestine. I think it's important, as a director, it is important who we see on screen and what they look like.
Please, if we could just quiet a moment, then perhaps we could speak calmly and I might be able to help.
I can see you're influential ladies with great passion, but I fear my hands are tied more and more by London. Rebel attacks have almost doubled in the past few weeks, so we have no option but to exact the laws which punish the villages entirely for the crimes of the few.
Why punish everyone for the action of a few?
Because as you know better than anyone, the Arab holds the community in higher value than the individual.
And I wanted something that really represents us in all our colors, in all our, you know, everything that we are. We are a diverse community. That is our strength. That is something that also the West cannot understand about us. They still haven't figured out that, that person looks Palestinian, that person doesn't, or that person is, they just they just don't get it.
Yeah.
So yeah. And she's amazing, Mariam.
Yeah. She is amazing.
Yeah.
So, see, I knew you had. I'm telling you, there's more to this movie. I still think like there's a lot more to unlock.
There's a lot more to unlock.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I like what we look like.
Yeah.
My casting director, I drove her nuts too. We've got to look like how we look.
Yeah, look
and looking like in the 30s, like it's a period film. But even when I do films that like take place now, like I just like it's important to see our faces, like human faces.
Yeah.
That's a personal thing.
Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. Just really quick, your grandparents and your great-grandparents, what would they say to you today knowing what you've accomplished and what you've done for the Palestinian cause? Would they say, for example, oh, I knew it. I saw it when she was born. She's going to be a game changer.
So I really wish that my grandparents were alive and like today. My great-grandparents, I don't know what they would say. Like now we have to imagine.
Yeah.
Because, okay, we start with the great-grandparents. Like when I think about, a man who was like him, I can't imagine. I think he was sort of like an Ottoman kind of guy. Like he was with the Ottomans. Like he was, the Ottomans put certain people in positions of power and like various. It's the way they controlled the population.
Got it.
And I think my grandfather was like a Mukhtar, great grandfather, Mukhtar. So that means he had a good relationship. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been a Mukhtar, right?
Right.
So I don't know. When I imagine him, I think of a very sort of conservative person. Actually, but I never knew him. I know that my grandfather, his son, was rebellious, and he was a journalist. And he was a very enraged, bitter person. He was a supporter of the rebellion of 36. He wrote about it. He was like, he was on fire, and he was very angry. He was an angry person. He was angry with everything, and because he was such a political being.
Yeah.
So that's what I wish, like, to share this film with him, that I would be curious how he would see it and think about it.
But he would tell you he's proud of you, probably, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. In the most Palestinian, fatherly way, I'm sure.
Yeah. But also my great-grandfather, I will never forget, I was a child, and my parents were very careful about talking politics with us. I think they wanted to protect us from that, so they didn't talk about politics. But of course, we were in Palestine, and we were witnessing occupation and soldiers and being strip searched, and all of that thing that all Palestinians go through. So we were like experiencing it, but having parents that never talked about it. But I remember my grandfather. He was also like he was a tough guy, but I remember he grabbed my hand one day, and he was like, never forget who you are. Don't forget who you are. He was squeezing my hand so hard. He's like, don't forget who you are. Do not forget. And my father was like, let go of her. Like, leave her alone. And it was so intense. And it was like, I remember it really well because no one ever talked to me like that. So,
And you never forgot.
I never forgot.
That's amazing. All right. For the last segment, we asked the guests just to look at this camera here, and you can deliver any message you want to anyone. It could be to the audience, to the fans, to your family, to your daughter, whatever you like.
Okay. So I'm going to be very vulnerable now. I'm going to say that this film and this work, I hope that my daughter, Shams, you will one day understand why for a few years your parents were not as present and very stressed out in your childhood, because we were creating this that I hope is for your generation and the next. My poor daughter.
No.
Yeah. Because my husband's a producer on the film, so we are like...
Got it.
Crazy.
You should have brought her with you.
I wanted to bring her with me, but...
Didn't work out.
Well, it's just like, I don't know, just yanking her around all over the place.
It's a good experience.
Although
though.
she's like, she's like now, she loves to travel. And also she's upset all the time because she's like, you said we made this film. Because one day I told her, this is like our film, like the three of us, like Baba, Mama, and you made the film because you like were patient with us and you understood that we were, to take 2 years to make a film, when it should take 3 months, was like a killer. And so now she's like, if I made the film, how come I don't get invited to festivals? How come I don't get...
You should just put her on as an executive producer.
Yeah, she has to thank you.
Does she? I didn't see that.
Yeah.
See, another thing I missed. Seriously, brilliant movie. You are a brilliant human being. I really do appreciate it. I don't know if you get a lot of thank yous and appreciation.
Thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah, but thank you, and hopefully we have you on for the next movie.
Yeah, inshallah.
Inshallah. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, really good conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Listen, stay tuned, cause it's time for Sumud.